Alabama nursing student Carly Russell was driving home from work on July the 13th of 2023 when she dialed 911 to report seeing a toddler wandering along the side of Interstate 459. She said she was pulling over to help the child and then called her sister-in-law. The latter heard Russell scream before abruptly losing contact with her, though the line remained open. Responding law enforcement found no trace of the toddler, but they did stumble upon Russell's abandoned vehicle, along with her wig, phone, and purse. Over the next 2 days, local authorities organized an extensive search effort involving dozens of police officers and a $25,000 reward. The search came to an end just before 11 p.m. on July the 15th when Russell returned to her Hoover residence on foot. The woman told investigators that after rushing to aid the abandoned toddler, she'd been abducted by a man with orange hair and a bald spot. She said she was stuffed into a vehicle, blindfolded, and driven to a house where she was forced to remove her clothes. Russell claimed that her kidnappers took pictures of her, but didn't make any physical contact with her. When she was later placed back in the vehicle, she claimed to have escaped and made a run for it into the woods before finding her way back home. Following Russell's reappearance, police findings began to cast doubt on her abduction story. She reportedly searched "Do you have to pay for an Amber Alert?" and "How to take money from a register without being caught" on the internet. She also looked up bus tickets from Birmingham to Nashville with a departure date of July the 13th, the day she went missing. Furthermore, there hadn't been any other reports of a toddler being seen on the side of the highway. Eventually, Russell confessed to making the whole thing up and was consequently arrested on charges of falsely reporting to law enforcement officers and falsely reporting an incident, both misdemeanors. The 26-year-old flashed a big smile in her subsequent booking photo before being bonded out the following day. The first court date in connection with the case was scheduled for October the 11th of 2023. Number 6. Amber Lee Childs. On the morning of February the 20th of 2020, police officers were dispatched to 101 Kaywood Place in Hot Springs, Arkansas, after authorities received reports of a burglary in progress. The homeowner, 46-year-old Amber Lee Childs, was waiting outside when the officers arrived. She claimed to have witnessed a pair of Hispanic men breaking into her house earlier that morning. One of the responding officers later stated that Childs was acting erratic and hallucinating. At one point, she gestured towards some nearby bushes and said, "There's someone in there," but the police couldn't find anyone. The woman went on to say that the burglars had killed her cat and left it in the front yard, but officers once again found no evidence in support of her claims. When asked if she was intoxicated, Childs confessed to snorting meth 24 hours earlier. By the time of her admission, law enforcement had already searched and cleared the residence. Inside, they'd encountered the woman's brother-in-law, who denied that any burglary had taken place. Childs was subsequently taken into police custody on a felony charge of communicating a false alarm, as well as misdemeanor counts of public intoxication and disorderly conduct. Online records indicated that she'd been arrested for communicating a false alarm the previous year as well. She pleaded no contest to the charge mere weeks before her latest incident. Number 5. Kenneth Campbell. In February and March of 2016, Queens resident Kenneth Campbell made 36 false alarm calls to New York City authorities. FDNY officials released a statement detailing how the 47-year-old repeatedly requested assistance to his apartment building in Kew Gardens. The calls centered around bomb scares, gas leaks, electrical fires, and emergency medical assistance that all turned out to be fake. It was also reported that Campbell made upwards of 100 calls to his neighbors, harassing them about non-existent problems in and around the building. He admitted to changing his voice when making the calls, as well as using payphones or other people's phones in order to evade detection. In one instance, Campbell allegedly took on a Middle Eastern accent while telling 911 dispatchers that he was with Saddam Hussein and had a bomb. The man was arrested in late March, charged with making threats, falsely reporting an incident, and aggravated harassment. His bail was set at $20,000 and a judge ordered that he undergo a medical and psychological evaluation. Number 4. Joseph Desmond Pharrell. Police officers in Gulf Shores, Alabama were called to the Colonial Grand apartment complex shortly after 5:30 p.m. on November the 6th of 2022. Local law enforcement had received several calls about a man in the parking lot screaming for help, claiming to have been shot. Upon arrival, the officers encountered a man by the name of Joseph Desmond Pharrell, who told them he'd been shot by two people he didn't know. They weren't able to locate a gunshot wound on Pharrell's body, but he was nevertheless taken to the Gulf Shores emergency room. Medical personnel subsequently confirmed that the 43-year-old hadn't in fact sustained a gunshot wound. Following his release from the hospital, Pharrell was arrested and charged with rendering false alarm. According to the Gulf Shores Police Department, the man had a documented history of reporting false events and was even given an ankle monitor for a previous rendering false alarm arrest. Number 3. Alicia Marie Garvin. Police in Sweetwater, Tennessee received a call about a disorderly woman at the Oyo Motel. On September the 27th of 2020, Officer Brandon Kanzler responded to the scene, where he was informed by motel staff that the woman in question had been knocking on doors and asking strangers if they wanted to have intimate relations with her. The suspect, 29-year-old Alicia Marie Garvin, also allegedly pulled at least 5 fire alarms while running through the motel in the nude. When Officer Kanzler made contact with Garvin, she tried to justify pulling the alarms by claiming that she was almost assaulted at a gas station in Arkansas. She then changed her statement, instead claiming that the alleged incident occurred in Nyota, in neighboring McMinn County. A call to the McMinn County Sheriff's Office subsequently revealed that there had been no reports of an attempted assault in the area. While speaking with Officer Kanzler, Garvin went on to admit that she shot up with meth. Days earlier, she was arrested and booked at the Monroe County Jail in Madisonville on charges of public intoxication, trespassing, and filing a false report. Today's topic was requested by Judge 276, Clarixo TV, and Cyberman Dan 1960. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Eleanor Williams. In May of 2020, Eleanor Williams from the English port town of Barrow in Furness posted photographs of herself on Facebook in which she was covered in bruises, sported a black eye, and had a partially severed finger. The brutality of the injuries she'd suffered helped her pictures go viral online, as did the allegations she detailed in the post. According to the 22-year-old, she'd been abused by multiple men and trafficked by an evil yet clever Asian grooming gang composed primarily of Pakistani business owners. Among those William accused of assault was Jordan Tengrove, who accompanied her on a night out in March of 2019. She eventually became too intoxicated and needed to be taken home, but later claimed that Tengrove drugged her and threatened her with a knife. In addition to having his reputation completely sullied, Tengrove spent 73 days behind bars for his alleged crimes. Williams also accused Barrow businessman Mohammed Ramzan, who she allegedly worked for, of grooming her since she was a young girl. Ramzan received countless death threats as a result of the allegations, which were also said to have created a state of heightened tension in Barrow. Following further investigation, however, Cumbria police determined that Williams's accusations were entirely false. She'd used 6 different cell phones to create fake identities and manipulated the Snapchat accounts of real men to support her heinous claims. She was brought to trial at Preston Crown Court, where it was revealed that she inflicted the devastating injuries shown in her Facebook post on herself with a hammer. The young woman was found guilty of perverting the course of justice despite maintaining her innocence. In March of 2023, she was jailed for 8.5 years as punishment. If your daily "they will kill you" thirst hasn't been saturated just yet, then we have our previous release on when restraining orders go wrong lined up for you after number 1 still. Number 1. Disappearance of Nikki Alcaraz. On May the 4th of 2023, Tennessee woman Nikki Alcaraz and her boyfriend Stephen Tyler Stratton were pulled over in central New Mexico while on a cross-country trip to California. As shown in body cam footage of the traffic stop, Alcaraz had visible bruises on her face and arm. When questioned by responding EMTs, Stratton indicated that there was an altercation between him and his girlfriend, but neglected to go into further detail. As it would later emerge, law enforcement had been notified of said altercation by a truck driver who witnessed Stratton punching Alcaraz on the side of the road along Interstate 40. Local authorities were already en route to the scene after receiving a distress call from a screaming woman who suddenly stopped responding to dispatchers. The body cam video showed Alcaraz initially telling officers that she wanted to press charges against her boyfriend. However, when the police made contact with Stratton, they observed that his face was covered in blood and later determined that the pair had been mutual combatants. Officers confiscated a knife from Stratton, who said he didn't want to press charges against Alcaraz. The couple reportedly appeared to have been drinking, but both denied having been behind the wheel of their Jeep Wrangler, which was subsequently impounded. In the end, no charges were filed and the couple were allowed to go free. About a week later, 33-year-old Alcaraz was reported missing by her sister. The situation was quickly likened to the disappearance and murder of Gabby Petito, who also went missing while on a road trip with her longtime partner. Concerns were quelled, however, when Alcaraz was spotted at a Walmart in Northern California on May the 30th. She sold her phone at a kiosk and exhibited no signs of being in imminent danger. After officials from both the Redding and Eureka police departments made contact with the woman, she was no longer considered a missing person.
Number 6. Mackenzie Anderson. On March the 25th of 2022, officers in Newcastle, Australia, responded to a 911 call in the suburb of Mayfield. They arrived at the scene within minutes and found 21-year-old Mackenzie Anderson suffering from multiple stab injuries. The woman's child, who was covered in her blood but otherwise unharmed, was found nearby. As a friend would later tell local media, Anderson had been left in critical condition after shielding her child during the attack and then clinging to life long enough to make sure he was all right. First responders pronounced her dead at the scene, where they also found and arrested her former boyfriend, 22-year-old Tyrone Thompson. He'd been paroled earlier in the month after being detained for a domestic abuse on an unrelated case. In the days leading up to the fatal attack, Anderson had called and messaged friends, claiming that someone was threatening her and her child's life. Law enforcement didn't disclose if Thompson, who wasn't the father of Anderson's child, had been the person issuing the threats. Earlier on the day of the woman's death, he'd spent several hours drinking and socializing with her. The former couple had met even though there was an active restraining order between them. Later on, Thompson broke into her home after he'd allegedly found out that she'd moved on with someone else. Anderson called the police to report the restraining order breach, but by the time officers arrived at the scene, her ex had stabbed her at least 20 times. Thompson was formally charged with murder, enter with intent, and breaching an apprehended domestic violence order. Number 5. Ella Crow. British teenager Ella Crow began dating Liam Mountford of Lee, Manchester, in June of 2020, and the relationship soon turned abusive. Mountford's controlling behavior included accusing Crow of cheating on him whenever she went to visit her friends or family. The man, who was 15 years her senior, broke her phone to prevent her from contacting loved ones. On one occasion, he grabbed Crow off the street as she struggled to get away from him and forced her to crouch in the footwell of his van. In another instance, he threw her belongings on the roof of a shed and then bundled her into furniture, causing bruising to her legs and feet. The teenager became so distraught in the relationship that she at one point told Mountford she didn't want to live anymore, to which he reportedly replied by offering to set up a noose so that she could hang herself. Crow eventually told her parents about the campaign of abuse she'd suffered at Mountford's hands, and he was jailed for several weeks in the spring of 2021. While out on bail in April, he met the 19-year-old again, snatched her cell phone, and pushed her into the pavement. He then punched the rear window of a parked car and the wing mirror of another. Mountford pleaded guilty to coercive behavior and was sentenced to 12 months imprisonment, suspended for 2 years. in addition to being handed a 2-year restraining order, barring him from contacting Crow. Only 9 days later, he sent the teen a love heart emoji on one of her Snapchat posts. She was shocked to see the comment and interpreted it as a subversive threat, fearing he'd come after her. Mountford was again spared jail time for the restraining order breach and given a suspended sentence. Crow moved to live with a friend in Wales to avoid her ex, who had 39 offenses on record, including grievous bodily harm, racially aggravated assault, and numerous breaches of court orders. Number 4. Parkland Accident. A horrific car crash that left the former couple trapped in their mangled vehicles was reported in late December of 2018 in the town of Parkland, Washington. The identities of those involved weren't released by the authorities, but they did share crime scene photos showing the extent of the damage. In what a sheriff's department official reported as a case of domestic abuse, a 34-year-old woman had previously obtained a restraining order against her ex-boyfriend. In the aftermath, the man drove his Volkswagen at over 50 miles per hour and T-boned her Honda. The side of the latter vehicle was crushed and the victim was left in critical condition. The 37-year-old suspect was also severely injured as his Volkswagen flipped over against the side of his ex's apartment building. He was treated in a local hospital and then arrested by Pierce County Sheriff's detectives on charges that included assault, felony domestic violence court order violation, reckless endangerment, and driving with a suspended license. Number 3. Monica Murrah. 45-year-old Monica Starr Murrah from Vancouver, Canada, was granted a temporary order against her husband, Michael, on July the 8th of 2020. The woman claimed to be afraid for her life and that of the couple's 8-year-old son in the application, and reported multiple incidents of physical and psychological abuse dating back to at least 2017. The most recent of them reportedly involved Michael consuming unspecified illicit substances and then choking her. Monica tried to make the order permanent on August the 4th of 2021, but Superior Court Commissioner Karen Sheenberg denied her request, citing insufficient grounds. Around the same time, Monica filed for divorce from her estranged husband. On November the 7th, he showed up to his former Vancouver home armed with a knife and holding a Bible and confronted Monica. Their child subsequently went to knock on a neighbor's door shouting that his mother needed help. The neighbor went to the residence and yelled for Michael to get out. The latter ran out the back door, at which point the neighbor locked the house and tended to Monica, who was clutching a towel to her chest. The woman reported that Michael had cornered her in the bathroom and stabbed her multiple times. She later succumbed to her injuries. When the police arrived at the residence, they found Michael outside, holding a knife and with blood on his hands. He obeyed officers' commands to drop the weapon and told them he'd killed Star Beast, referring to his wife in order to fulfill a prophecy. He was arrested on a charge of first-degree domestic violence murder, and a judge subsequently ordered a mental health evaluation for him. Number 2. Torani Savage. On June the 24th of 2022, Torani Savage of Houghton Lake, Michigan, asked for a personal protection order, or PPO, from her husband, Bo. The woman claimed that the man suffered from mental health issues, had stopped taking his medication, and had recently bought a firearm. He refused to leave the home they shared, and Torani noted that she didn't want her safety or that of her teenage son to be in jeopardy. 3 days after the filing, Torani's request was denied as a judge found insufficient evidence of a showing of immediate or irreparable injury, loss, or damage. The judge informed her that she could file another protection order if she began divorce proceedings. Torani filed for divorce on July the 7th, citing Bo's infidelity as a reason, while also describing him being verbally violent, threatening to punch her and refusing to leave the home. In the filing, Torani wrote, "He told me I will need a PPO because I have no idea what I just started." 3 days later, Bo launched a horrific attack on Torani and her family. Using the legally purchased firearm, he shot and killed Torani, her son, Dayton Caldry, and her mother, 58-year-old Kim Lynette Ebright, before shooting himself. Number 1. Shanghai Shoe. In April of 2022, Shanghai Shoe, aged 44, went to the Cambridge District Court in Medford, Massachusetts, to ask for the extension of a restraining order against his nephew, 23-year-old Kong Wang. The older man, an accomplished cancer researcher, had initially helped the latter when he'd moved to the US from China to study computer science. Court documents indicated that in 2018, while Xue was traveling for work in China, his wife and Kong had started a romantic relationship. The woman then tried to end it in 2020, but Kong wouldn't accept the breakup. He messaged her, threatening to kill her family, claiming that she'd robbed him of his dignity and had left him a walking dead. He'd also threatened Xue, physically attacked him, and tried to force his way into his Arlington home. Xue and his wife got divorced in the affair's wake, but continued living together and took out a restraining order against Wang. The two men showed up to a hearing on April the 7th of 2022, during which a judge rejected Xue's request to extend the order. His attorney, William Barabino, later recounted that his client was affected by the decision, but added that he didn't at the time realize to what extent. Xue and Wang left the courthouse and headed to the lot where they were both parked. Xue got into his Chevrolet Equinox and then drove towards Wang, damaging multiple vehicles before pinning him against a Toyota RAV4. Xue then exited his vehicle with a pistol in hand and fired into Wang 5 times, killing him. Barabino initially thought he'd heard construction noises, but realized what happened upon going outside. He kept Xue, whom he described as a very kind and gentle, pleasant guy, at the scene until the police took him into custody and charged him with murder. Thanks for watching. Would you rather live in an apartment building with a faulty fire alarm that goes off multiple times a week, or never use a pillow again for the rest of your life?